My father once asked me, "Why do you hardly ever come home anymore?" I didn't answer at once. Instead, I walked him through the living room, hallway, and kitchen, pointing at each wall covered with photographs of my sister. Then I said, "Because I have always felt like a visitor here." As a child, I believed love in our family was like a wall with room for only so many frames. I believed my sister had filled every inch before I was born. I do not mean that as a metaphor. I believed it literally, the way children believe things. I thought that if I did something important enough, something so perfect nobody could ignore it, my father would take down one of her photographs and hang one of mine. He never did. We lived in a town in Ohio, about 40 minutes from Columbus. My parents, Robert and Elaine, met at a school football game when they were 17 and married 3 years later. Maya was born first. I came 4 years after her. From the moment Maya stepped onto the ice, she became the main event in our house. My father told the story of her birth so often that I could repeat it word for word. How she came out with her eyes open, how a nurse commented on the strength in her legs, and how he knew she would be an athlete. The story of my birth was shorter. My father was not in the room. He was not in the hospital. He was sitting at a children's ice show 30 minutes away watching 4-year-old Maya, dressed in a glittering blue costume, make her first clumsy spin beside the boards. My mother gave birth without him. He arrived 2 hours later. My story began with somebody else's turn on the ice. Before anyone decides that I'm describing a terrible childhood, I should be honest. We had a house, there was food in the refrigerator, our clothes were clean, and the bills were paid. Nobody screamed at us or hit us. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of unfairness that was almost impossible to explain to adults. Whenever I said Maya received more attention, my mother would sigh and tell me, "Do not keep score. It is an ugly habit." I heard that sentence constantly. Do not keep score, which was strange because my father kept score of everything involving Maya. In a kitchen drawer, he had a thick notebook containing every competition result since she was 6. Judges' scores, placements, falls, program names, even the weight of her skates. When a number looked bad, he erased it and rewrote it neatly, as though handwriting could change the result. Whenever I noticed a pattern in our family, I was the one accused of keeping score. Maya did not simply skate at the local recreation center. She trained seriously. Private coaches, early morning ice sessions, expensive costumes, camps and competitions in other states. 5 days a week, my father drove her to a rink north of Columbus, nearly 90 minutes each way. Once at dinner, he calculated how many miles he had driven for her over 10 years and announced the number like a medal. When Maya was 9, my father turned half of our garage into a training room. He insulated the walls, leveled the floor, installed mirrors, and bolted a stretching rig to one beam. A shelf for trophies went up along one wall. Below it, he added hooks for costumes, and beside the door, he mounted a whiteboard with her schedule. He built everything himself over one summer. That room cost more than my mother's old car. I know because I heard them arguing through the vent in my bedroom. My mother said they had already spent too much. My father answered with words I carried for years. Some kids get only one real chance. You do not waste it. Some kids. I joined the swim team. I chose it in 7th grade for a reason I dislike. All I needed was a swimsuit, goggles, and a towel. No private coach, no expensive equipment, no 90-minute drive. I could walk to the school pool because I walked almost everywhere. Swimming was perfect for a child nobody watched. You dive in, disappear beneath the water, touch the wall, and finish before anyone has time to look up from a phone. Over 4 years, my mother came to a handful of meets. My father came to 2. The first time, he left before the finals because he wanted to avoid traffic. The pool was 12 minutes from our house. The second time was during my junior year, and it is the one I still remember. It was the district championship at a sports complex near Dayton. Snow had started before sunrise, our bus arrived late, and the water felt colder than usual. I was swimming the 200-meter butterfly, the kind of race where your arms stop feeling like they belong to you before the final turn. I swam the best race of my life. In the last 50 meters, I passed 2 boys who had been nearly a body length ahead. I touched the wall in 3rd place and hung on the lane rope for several seconds, trying to breathe. A volunteer handed me a bronze medal without looking at me. I climbed into the stands, soaked, with a towel around my shoulders, and searched the parking lot for my father's dark blue truck.
It sat higher than most cars and was easy to spot. It was gone. Later, my mother told me he had left because Maya had an extra practice that afternoon. Not a competition, not a qualifying event, just an open ice session where anyone could skate after paying $15. I rode back on the school bus with the medal pressed into my palm and told nobody I had placed. My mother was different. She did not choose Maya as openly. She was simply tired, and long ago she had decided that keeping everyone fed and their clothes clean was enough. Her care usually waited for me inside the microwave. I would come home at 9 after practice, work, or a school event and find a plate covered with a paper towel. On top was a note with one word, Ethan. I ate every meal she left. But a plate cannot ask how your race went. It cannot notice the medal hidden in your pocket. It cannot say that it waited for you too.
Maya was not a bad sister. She never mocked me, bragged about her trophies, or pushed me away. Sometimes she brought me hot chocolate or left an energy bar on the table. She was kind in a distracted, hurried way. Her life simply moved so fast that she never noticed who stood at the edge of it. And honestly, why would she? When you grow up in the center of the light, you have no reason to wonder how dark the corners are. I tried everything a child can try to earn attention. First came grades. I finished high school near the top of my class, earned a state honors diploma, and became one of 3 students chosen to speak at graduation. Maya struggled through math and once received a D in biology. When she raised her average just enough to stay eligible, my father took the whole family to a steakhouse. When I brought home my final transcript, he looked at it for a few seconds, said, "Good work," and asked me to help load suitcases into the truck. They were leaving at 5 the next morning for a competition in Pennsylvania. Then I joined the engineering club. We built model bridges from thin wood and tested how much weight they could carry. During my senior year, our design placed second in the state. My father thought the club was just another class. He congratulated me on getting a good grade. At 15, I began volunteering on weekend construction projects. That summer, I found a job with a small crew repairing roofs and building additions. At first, I carried lumber, swept debris, and handed tools to older workers. They paid me $10 an hour. The work was exhausting, but I loved it because I could point to something at day's end and say it had not existed that morning. My father did not know I had a job for almost 5 months. He found out by accident when he saw my car outside a building supply store and assumed I was in trouble. When I explained that I worked after school, he nodded once and asked whether I could pick up deck screws for the garage. By graduation, I had stopped auditioning for the role of a son he could be proud of. I understood the arrangement in our house. Maya was the story. I was the person moving the scenery between scenes. Only one person behaved differently. Ruth, my mother's mother. She lived 20 minutes away in a small house with yellow doors and so many porcelain cats that they occupied the bathroom windowsill. Grandma Ruth came to every swim meet, not only the important ones, every one. She kept a folding chair in the trunk of her older Toyota. She placed it near the locker room exit where almost nobody waited and sat with a thermos of coffee and a stopwatch. She wrote my times in a small notebook, though she often confused the tenths of a second. After each race, she stood and shouted, "You got faster on the last lap, I saw it." Sometimes she was wrong, but I never corrected her. That was the entire list of people who watched me. One elderly woman, one folding chair, and a thermos of coffee. When it was time for college, Maya received a partial skating scholarship to a school in Michigan. My father rented a trailer and made the trip twice that week. He assembled her loft bed and mounted shelves for her medals. My mother cried in the parking lot. My father took hundreds of photographs. Maya beside the entrance, Maya with her coach, Maya at the rink, Maya holding the key to her room. 2 years later, I was accepted into civil engineering at the University of Cincinnati. My father handed me a gas card and said, "Text your mother when you get there." I loaded my old car alone, carried the boxes to the 3rd floor, and assembled a bed that rocked until I wedged a magazine under one leg. Then I texted my mother that I had arrived. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. Nothing dramatic happened to me in college. I did not wake up one morning as a different person. I simply went to work. I discovered quickly that I was good at one thing, understanding why buildings stay standing. I loved tracing how weight moved through beams, columns, and foundations, and how one small crack could reveal an entire structure. I took every structures course available. For 2 summers, I interned with a company that inspected aging bridges. Most days, I hung beneath concrete spans in a harness, studying cracks. I loved it. During my sophomore year at 11, I sat alone in a classroom calculating reinforcement for an old brick wall. Suddenly, I understood something I should have seen years earlier. The emptiness I had carried since childhood was not proof that something was wrong with me, it was the result of something they had failed to build. The problem was not the house. Nobody had poured a foundation beneath one side of it. After graduation, I accepted a job in Portland, Oregon, mostly because it was more than 2,000 miles from home. I wanted to find out who I could become where nobody compared me to Maya. I was 22. I earned $64,000 a year and rented a one-bedroom apartment in a brick building. The radiator banged every night as though someone were striking the pipes with a wrench. And I turned out to be good at my job. The reason was not entirely healthy. When you spend childhood barely being noticed, you learn to work without applause. Nobody calls to ask how your day went. There are no family obligations pulling you away. There is only work and silence. I stayed late, accepted difficult assignments, and took projects other people avoided. It exhausted me, but I became indispensable. Meanwhile, Maya's story changed. During her second year of college, she landed badly after a jump and destroyed her knee. Surgery, rehabilitation, an attempted comeback, and then chronic back pain ended it. At 21, she moved home. And I want to be honest, I felt sorry for her. Her whole life had been pointed in one direction, and then the road ended. Maya had no idea who she was without the ice. That was a real loss. For nearly a year, Maya worked at a bank and came home looking as though each shift had taken something from her. She missed the rink, the sound of blades cutting ice, and even the cold smell of the arena. Then my father suggested that she open her own skating school. He co-signed the loan, borrowed against the house, and renovated an old rink outside town. After work, he drove there to replace wiring, paint locker rooms, and build benches. I did not learn about the house being used as collateral until years later. Maya Ellis Skating Academy opened when she was 23. At the ceremony, my father held one end of the ribbon, the mayor held the other, and Maya stood between them with oversized scissors. A photograph appeared in the local paper. My father cut out the article, framed it, and hung it in the living room. Around the same time, Maya met Lucas. He managed a warehouse at an auto parts store and was genuinely kind. Lucas helped every neighbor who asked and could agonize over 2 identical boxes of screws. I liked him, but I would not have trusted him to run a lemonade stand. They married when I was 21. I flew in from Portland on Friday, attended the ceremony on Saturday, and returned Sunday. During the wedding slideshow, I appeared once. I was about 8, standing behind Maya near a vending machine at the rink, blurred and cut almost in half. That was the first time I counted. At the time, I thought I was being petty. Now I understand I was collecting evidence. A few years later, Maya had 2 daughters, Lily and Claire, and my parents became grandparents as if everything before that had only been rehearsal. Their drawings covered the refrigerator. Matching portraits appeared on the mantle. Every trip to the zoo became an album. When I was 26, I did something expensive and foolish. That fall, I replaced the roof on my parents' detached garage. It had leaked for 6 years. I brought a helper from Portland and paid for his flight and labor. We tore off the old roofing, replaced damaged sheathing, installed a waterproof membrane, and laid new shingles. It took 2.5 days and cost almost $4,000. I did not do it only because the roof leaked. I wanted, once, to give my father something only I could give him. Building was my language. It was how I knew to say, "I love you." 2 months later, my mother mentioned that a neighbor had praised the new roof. I asked what my father had said. He told them Lucas helped do it. Lucas had never held a roofing nailer in his life. My father was not trying to steal the credit. I do not think he even noticed he was lying. In the story he had built about our family, I could not be the person who had done something that important. The fact did not fit, so he reached for his son-in-law. That was when I understood the problem was no longer finding the right thing to do. Even if I built the wall myself, someone else's photograph would still be hung on it.
At Christmas that year, I was 27. I had not been home in almost 18 months. I entered through the side door and suddenly saw what had always been there, but what I had refused to examine directly. My parents had turned the house into a museum, and the museum had only one subject. In the living room, my father had built a glass front cabinet with lights. Inside were Maya's medals arranged by year and 3 costumes mounted like exhibits. Above it hung the photograph from the day she signed her scholarship papers. The mantle held Maya at championships, Maya and Lucas on their wedding day, and Lily and Claire. The hallway contained 14 frames. I counted them. Maya at 6, Maya at 9, Maya at 12, Maya in her college jacket, Maya cutting the ribbon, Maya holding Lily in the hospital, Maya holding Claire. The sequence continued to the end of the hall. The refrigerator held 6 drawings, a rink magnet, and a laminated first-place ribbon from preschool. My father had taken a preschool ribbon to an office supply store to have it laminated. In the garage, every competition number Maya had worn was pinned above the workbench. Beside them sat her first skate bag with a plaque that read, "Where It All Began." Even the downstairs bathroom had a framed photograph of 16-year-old Maya in midair during a jump. There was not one photograph of me anywhere in the house. I went upstairs. The room where I had grown up no longer existed. My parents had removed the carpet, laid rubber flooring, installed mirrors, and added stretching equipment so my nieces could practice there. Across the hall, Maya's room remained untouched. The same bedspread, the same posters, her old costume still hanging in clear bags inside the closet. It looked like the preserved room of someone who had disappeared, except Maya was alive, married, raising 2 children, and living 10 minutes away. I stood in the doorway of my former room for a long time. I did not feel rage. I barely felt sad. What I felt was certainty, the kind that comes when you stop arguing with yourself after years of trying. Like staring at a cloud until you admit there is no hidden shape in it. When I went downstairs, my father was checking the weather. He looked up and said, "Good, you're here. You're tall. Grab the ladder. The lights are loose near the corner." He had not noticed that I had been gone for 20 minutes. He had not asked where I went. He simply needed a tall person with a ladder. After that Christmas, I stopped coming home. There was no argument or announcement. I stopped calling first, booking flights, and reminding them that I existed. It took my parents 5 months to notice. When my father finally called, he did not ask how I was. He said, "Quick question, would your company buy a banner for Maya's Academy? They're raising money for new flooring." After 5 months of silence, his first words were requests to help my sister. And I bought the banner.
I bought it because I did not want my anger at my father to become a punishment for children who only came there to skate, and because I had never learned to say no when a request carried our family name. After that, I let the silence return. By then, I no longer felt like a son. I felt like a researcher. I wanted another result. I wanted to know how long it would take before someone contacted me without asking for money, sharing news about Maya, or mentioning her academy. I wanted one person to phone because they wondered how I felt. 9 weeks passed. My mother called on a Sunday afternoon. She asked about Portland's rain, whether I was eating, and then said, "Your father wants to know if you are coming for the 4th. Not, "We would love to see you," not, "I miss you." Even the invitation arrived as somebody else's message. The holiday was 11 days away. I did not go. Meanwhile, my life in Oregon was becoming better without them. I moved to a company restoring old buildings, warehouses, theaters, schools, and apartment blocks that had been failing for decades. My job was to notice what everyone else walked past: a crack above a window, a settling corner, a rusted beam behind a clean ceiling. I looked at an old structure and tried to find where it had begun to give up. My boss was Marcus Hale, a man who had worked construction since 16. He almost never praised anyone, but he made you feel like an adult. He promoted me from project engineer to project manager, and before I turned 29, put me in charge of restoration. Then there was Leah. We met on a job involving a library built in 1904 that was being converted into a city archive. My company had been hired to stabilize one wall, and Leah, the archivist, had to explain why I could not drill wherever it was convenient. She was short, calm, and listened in a way almost nobody did. While you spoke, she did not nod or prepare her response. She simply waited. Then, when you finished, she said the one accurate thing about what you had told her. During our third conversation, she asked how the wall's weight would transfer into the new supports. I explained for nearly 10 minutes and drew a diagram on the back of a plan. When I stopped, I said, "Sorry, that was probably too much detail." Leah looked at me. "Why did you apologize?" For the long answer. I asked a question, then I asked a follow-up. You answered both. Nobody has ever apologized for answering something I asked. I had no response. We started seeing each other 2 months later. Leah organized other people's histories for a living. She opened boxes left after someone died or moved, and used letters, receipts, photographs, and notebooks to understand who that person had been. One evening she said, "People think the important part of a collection is what is inside it.
It isn't. The important part is what somebody decided was worth keeping. At the time, I did not understand why that sentence stayed with me.
I told Leah about my family 4 months into our relationship. We were having dinner and I spoke flatly because I had learned that emotion made people look at you as though you were asking permission to be hurt. She listened to everything: Maya, the competitions, the empty hallway, and my bedroom turned into a training room. Then she said, "That explains why you act as if you never need anyone." A moment later, she added, "It also explains why you apologize before asking me to pass the salt. We are going to work on that." That was when I knew I loved her. 8 months later, Maya called. We were not enemies, we were simply two people who had grown up beneath the same roof without collecting many memories together. She told me our father was retiring after 32 years. Ellis Heating and Plumbing had started with an old van and grown into 7 employees and 3 trucks. The family was planning a party at the Veterans Hall. Maya said, "Dad asked me to make sure you come. He says you have been distant lately and he does not understand why." He did not understand. The man who removed my bedroom, preserved Maya's exactly as she left it, and filled every wall with her life, did not understand why I had stopped visiting. Leah thought I should go, not because family was family. She said, "You have been running this experiment for years, but you have never shown them the results." She offered to come. I resisted until she pointed out that I was afraid she would see everything herself. I understood. We flew to Columbus on Friday. First, we drove to my parents' house so they could meet Leah. Standing beside her made the house look different. I watched her face change. She listened politely to my mother while her eyes moved from the display cabinet to the mantel and then toward the hallway. Later, in the car, she asked, "Where are you in any of this?" I shrugged. I'd been doing that for 20 years. The next evening, the hall was crowded with former employees, neighbors, suppliers, church members, and longtime customers. Along the back wall, my mother and Maya had built a memory wall, 164 photographs mounted on boards and arranged by decade. I counted how many included me: 4. In the first, I stood at the edge of a wedding group, half hidden behind a woman in a hat. In the second, I was blurred in the stands behind Maya at a competition. The third was a baby picture that could have been anyone. The fourth showed me beside my father at graduation, cropped through my left shoulder. Maya appeared in 72. Leah counted 2. She moved along the wall with her phone because organizing collections was her profession. At the end, she came back and stood beside me. 4, she said. I know. No, Ethan, I work with family archives. Even when there is a favorite child, the numbers are never like this. 4 out of 164 is not an accident. It is a decision made again and again for decades.
Then my father gave his retirement speech. It was a good speech. He joked about the old van, thanked his workers and my mother, and paused when he mentioned the first furnace he installed. He thanked Maya for helping with the books while she opened the academy. Then he made an announcement I had not known was coming. He was giving Ellis Heating and Plumbing to Lucas. My brother-in-law managed an auto parts warehouse. He had never installed a furnace or supervised a service crew. My father stood before nearly 100 people and handed him a company built over 32 years. The room applauded. I stood near the back wall with coffee in a plastic cup. I had a civil engineering degree and more than a decade of experience with buildings. Still, I clapped, because what else could I do? My name was not mentioned once. Afterward, I slipped through a side door because I needed air. 5 minutes later, my father came outside carrying a beer. He put an arm around my shoulders, something he had done only a few times in my adult life. "This is something, isn't it?" he said. "I'm glad you came. You should visit more often. Why don't you ever come home anymore?" He was sincere. To him, my absence was a mystery he had never investigated. Something inside me gave way, like a beam carrying too much weight. "Dad," I said, "can we go back to the house? There's something I need to show you." He looked confused, but agreed. Leah rode with us silently. Mother followed with Maya and Lucas because she never let family members leave without learning why. 10 minutes later, all 6 of us were inside the house. I led my father to the refrigerator. "Look at it. Tell me what you see." He laughed nervously. It's a refrigerator, Ethan. No. Look at what's on it. I pointed to Lily's drawing, Claire's picture of the rink, the photograph of Maya and Lucas at the lake, the Academy magnet, and the laminated preschool ribbon. He stopped smiling. Next, I took him into the living room and gestured toward the lit cabinet. The medals, the costumes, the scholarship photograph. Then we went into the garage. I showed him every competition number Maya had worn pinned above his workbench. I showed him the skate bag and the plaque reading, "Where it all began." Finally, I walked him into the hallway. I moved from frame to frame and named them aloud. Maya at 6. Maya at 9. Maya at 12. Maya in her college jacket. Maya opening the academy. Maya holding Lily. Maya holding Claire.
I continued. I swam for 6 years, and you attended 2 races. I graduated with honors. I have a civil engineering degree. I run a restoration division with 40 people. I replaced the roof on the garage, and you told the neighbor Lucas did it. There is not one object in this house that says I exist. My mother, silent all evening, stepped forward. Ethan, you are being dramatic. This is your father's night. Do not ruin it. Do not ruin it. As if the problem was not that I had been invisible for 30 years, but that I had pointed it out after the party. As if asking to be counted were a breach of manners. Then Leah, who had spoken fewer than 40 words to my mother in 2 days, said quietly, "Elaine, there were 164 photographs on that wall tonight. Ethan was in 4. I counted them. That is not drama, that is an inventory." The house went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Lucas looked at the floor. Maya covered her mouth. My mother turned pale. My father still said nothing. The silence lasted so long that it stopped being a pause and became an answer. "I am not ruining anything," I said. "This was ruined years ago. You never noticed because you were always looking at the other end of the hallway." I took Leah's hand and we walked out. On the drive to the hotel, I did not cry, shout, or slam anything. I sat in the passenger seat and watched dark fields past the window. Leah drove with one hand and held my forearm with the other. We flew back to Portland the next morning. I turned off my phone at the gate and did not switch it on until we landed. 14 missed calls, 9 from my mother, 4 from Maya, 1 from Lucas, which I still find strange and a little kind, none from my father. Not one call from the man whose party it had been. Not one from the man who had asked the question. What followed was not an apology. Nobody wrote a letter or admitted they had failed to see me. Instead, my mother began a campaign of guilt carefully built. The first message arrived 48 hours later. "Ethan, I do not understand how you could humiliate your father in his own home." The next morning, "Your father has not been himself since you left." Then, "Maya says you have carried this for years and never told anyone. That is not fair to the rest of us." I read that one twice. Never told anyone. I had been telling them for 20 years in the only language a child knows. I brought home grades, medals, awards, finished projects, and job offers. I placed each achievement in front of them and waited for somebody to look up. The final message came at 11:40 on Thursday night. "Ethan, I am your mother. I was in labor with you for 19 hours. The least you can do is answer your phone." I sat on my couch reading it and thought how remarkable it was that she could remember 19 hours from almost 3 decades earlier, yet had never remembered to hang one 4x6 photograph. I did not answer.
Leah told me I had to stop processing everything with only a girlfriend and a gym membership. She found a therapist named Dr. Mercer, a family systems specialist who worked with adults raised in homes where one child became the family project and the other became background support. Dr. Mercer was in his late 50s and had a habit of letting silence continue beyond comfort. Later, I realized the silence was the treatment. During our 4th session, he said something that rearranged my life. "Ethan, you've spent almost 30 years trying to earn a place on a wall arranged before you arrived. But the wall was never full. There was always empty plaster near the corner. You have been standing there holding your own frame, waiting for someone to bring a nail." I said nothing. He continued, "They let you stand there year after year because a man holding his own frame against a wall is not a problem for anyone except the man." 9 days later, I was driving to a job site at 6:15 when I suddenly could not see through my tears. I pulled onto the shoulder and cried with both hands on the wheel.
Something changed afterward. I became angry, but not in the cinematic way where you drive home and deliver a perfect speech. It was quieter. The anger went into my work. 6 weeks later, I told Marcus I planned to start my own restoration company. "I have been waiting 2 years for you to say that," he replied. Then he sent me my first 3 clients. Northline Restoration began with me, 2 workers named Jonah and Miguel, a 2004 flatbed with a passenger door that opened only from the outside, and a rented bay east of Portland. In our first year, we completed 12 jobs. I calculated payroll at Leah's kitchen table every Sunday night. By our 3rd year, we had completed nearly 200 projects. By the 5th, Northline had 60 employees, 4 crews, and a city contract to stabilize the historic buildings. It all felt unreal. Leah and I bought a house from 1910. The north foundation had failed, the roof had 3 layers of shingles, and the wiring was so dangerous that the inspector called it an ethical concern. Everyone told us not to buy it. I decided within 5 minutes I could already see what it would become. For 2.5 years, I repaired it, mostly at night. Leah sat on an overturned bucket reading while I reinforced the foundation. I restored the windows and built the upstairs hallway myself. That hallway would matter later. Without intending to, I also built something I had never possessed. Marcus and Dana invited us for Sunday dinners. At first it felt strange to sit at a table where someone asked about my week and waited for the answer. Joan and Sophie became our closest friends. We took raining camping trips and played trivia every Tuesday. When I turned 30, Leah organized a surprise party in our half-finished house. 22 people came. It was the first birthday celebration of my life where the event was me.
The cake read, "Happy 30th to the man who apologizes before asking for the salt." I tried to give a toast. I made it 11 words before my throat closed. Joma shouted something from the kitchen, everyone laughed, and I managed to begin again. Later, Dr. Mercer asked why. I gave him several clever answers. None were true. Finally, I said 22 people were quiet, looking at me and waiting for me to speak. My body did not know what that meant. He nodded. "That is not damage. It is a room you have never been in. You will learn it faster than you think." He was right. Around that time, I started a habit at Northline. At the end of every project, I walked the finished work with the person who had done most of it. I found one detail and named it aloud. "Miguel, the transition at the north window is the cleanest joint in the building." Not good job, something exact. I had learned that good job was a plate left in a microwave. It fed you, but proved nothing. A specific observation meant somebody had looked. I never wrote the rule down. When I told Dr. Mercer, he said, "So you built the company you needed as a child." I changed the subject. A minute later, he added, "You have spent this hour telling me about other men's walls." That stayed with me. Then there was Leah's family. I met them at a holiday dinner where I understood little. Her father, Samuel, was a retired shop teacher who pulled me into his garage to inspect a jointer he had rebuilt. Her mother, Nadia, asked 9 questions about my work. Before we left, she asked a 10th about something I had said earlier. In the car, I sat without starting the engine. Leah asked, "Are you okay?" Your mother asked me a follow-up question. She took my hand. Her family accepted me without ceremony. An aunt sent recipes. Samuel called on my birthday because he had written it down. I had known him 14 months. My father had never initiated a birthday call in my adult life. 18 months after Northline opened, Marcus asked me to inspect an old church his nephew had bought. Its bell tower had been separating from the main structure for years. I drove out on Saturday, spent 4 hours there for free, and wrote a repair plan. As I was leaving, Marcus followed me to the truck. "I will tell you something once," he said, "and never again, because it will go to your head. When a project goes wrong, the crews do not ask for the engineer of record. They do not ask for me. They ask whether Ethan is coming." I stood in the gravel with my clipboard and could not answer. Marcus understood. He tapped the truck roof twice and walked away. I drove home without the radio. My adult life was full of people choosing me. Crews, clients, friends, a woman, a seat at a Sunday table. But being chosen did not erase the original record. It created a second one beside it. For years, I carried 2 contradictory collections of evidence about my worth and could not make them agree. Dr. Mercer told me the conflict was normal. "You are not trying to convince the 7-year-old that he was mistaken," he said. He was not. He understood the house perfectly. You are teaching him that he can stop counting. The counting is over, but he does not know it yet. During those years, news from Ohio reached me mostly through Maya. Every few months, she sent careful messages,
in the tone people use when something is wrong but choose to act normally. "How is Portland?" "Dad says hello." I answered, briefly. From those fragments, I learned that Lucas was running Hellas Heating and Plumbing into the ground with remarkable friendliness. Within 18 months, both longtime employees had quit. Lucas understood customers, but not the trade. He lost the school district contract, which supplied almost 40% of its income. He financed 2 new trucks at rates that suggested extreme optimism. Mai's academy was struggling too. A franchise rink opened 8 miles away with birthday rooms and new equipment. Within a year, it took nearly a third of her students. My parents had borrowed against everything. They lived in a house mortgaged more than once for both businesses. I did not enjoy hearing this. It would make a cleaner story if I had felt satisfied. I did not. I received the news like a storm forecast for a city where I used to live. Then Grandma Ruth died. She was 88. It was a stroke, and it happened quickly, which everyone repeated as though speed were a favor. I learned about it 2 days later. My mother called on Wednesday to make sure I knew the funeral arrangements. When I asked, "What arrangements?" she went silent. "Oh, Ethan," she said, "we assumed Maya told you." They trusted the person who had never told me anything to tell me the one thing that mattered most. I flew to Ohio and sat in the 3rd row of a small Methodist church. Maya delivered the eulogy. It was good. She spoke about Grandma's baking, her porcelain cats, and her pride in everyone. Nobody asked me to speak. I did not want to. But not being asked was still information. Afterward, everyone returned to her house. Ham sandwiches covered the counter while 30 people discussed weather and traffic. I walked toward the bathroom and stopped. There were 9 framed photographs on the wall. 6 were of me at swim meets. There was my 8th grade portrait, a picture of me at 15 on a construction crew wearing a hard hat that was too large, my graduation photograph uncropped with both shoulders visible, and a picture of Grandma Ruth beside me at university graduation. I had forgotten. She had driven 5 hours alone at 79. I had walked through that hallway hundreds of times and never counted the frames. It had never occurred to me that counting might produce a result in my favor. I stood there with a paper plate for minutes. My father passed and asked, "You doing okay, son?" Then he kept walking without looking at the wall. 3 months later, a box arrived in Portland. My Aunt Denise had been clearing Grandma Ruth's bedroom and found it beneath her sweaters. A note on top read, "I think this was meant for you." Inside was every school photograph I had ever taken, arranged by year. There were birthday cards I had sent her, newspaper clippings from swim meets, and my district bronze medal. I had thrown it into a trash can. Somehow Grandma Ruth had taken it back out. At the bottom was a spiral notebook. 6 years of my race times were written inside. Date, event, lane, place, and time. Some entries had notes in uneven handwriting. Tired after the turn, strong finish, looked nervous but stayed with it. My father had kept Maya's skating scores in a kitchen drawer. Grandma Ruth had kept my swimming times beneath her sweaters. I sat on the floor of the hallway Leah and I had restored and cried for a long time. When I brought the notebook to Dr. Mercer, he studied it. "So the wall existed," he said. "You simply had the wrong address." I understood. 4 months later, Maya called. She discussed the girls and a coach who had quit before reaching the point. Our parents were in trouble. The furnace had failed, water was collecting beneath the house, the northeast corner had settled almost 2 inches. My father's retirement payments had stopped because Lucas's company was failing. Maya said, "I just thought you should know." It was the tone people use when asking for help while pretending they are not. I told her I would think about it. I sat on the back steps and knew my answer. Dr. Mercer helped me understand why. Families helping one another is not the problem, he said. There has been no acknowledgement, no repair, and no change. If you send money now, you tell them the arrangement can continue exactly as it is. So I sent nothing. For the first time, I did not feel guilty. Instead, I kept building. I passed my professional engineering exam, then earned my structural license 2 years later. Northline won a contract to stabilize 4 condemned warehouses near the river. We restored all 4. They now held apartments, shops, and a climbing gym inside walls I had decided were worth saving. I never told my family. Leah and I became engaged on a Wednesday while hanging an oak door that had leaned against our upstairs wall for over a year. She was holding 90 pounds of wood on shims while I set the top hinge. "This may be the most romantic thing we have ever done," she said. I proposed with a drill in my hand. She said yes before I finished, then told me not to let go of the hinge. By 32, I had a company, a restored home, friends who arrived without invitations, and a woman I was going to marry. I was happy in the quiet way that matters, the kind where you wake before sunrise on an ordinary Tuesday and think, this is good. That was when my father decided he wanted back into my life. It began with a letter.
The letter arrived in a plain envelope with my name in block capitals. I knew it was from my father because the pages were green engineering paper. The paper even smelled faintly of his shop. He had written 2 pages in pencil. He said he had been thinking since the retirement party. He had walked down that hallway thousands of times without seeing what I showed him. After I left, he stood there for nearly an hour. One sentence stopped me. I do not know how to repair something I did not know I was breaking. He wanted to visit Portland, see my house, and meet Leia. At the bottom, he signed Dad. Underneath, he added Robert, as if signing a work order. Leia put a hand against my back. You do not have to decide tonight, she said. I took the letter to Dr. Mercer. He read it. This is a real letter, he said. He is not defending himself, that matters. But words are cheap. Watch what he builds with them afterward. I wrote back. My first draft sounded like a legal complaint. The version I mailed was shorter. I thanked him for writing. I said I was open to a visit, but we could not pretend the hallway had been a misunderstanding. What happened at the party was not me being dramatic. It was me finally saying aloud what I had carried since childhood. 2 weeks later, he called. Not my mother, him. His voice was rough, and he left sentences unfinished. He said he understood. He and my mother wanted to come the next month. Then I heard my mother behind him. He explained that Maya, Lucas, and the girls wanted to come too. I paused. If they came, there would be noise and no real talk. Everyone would return home saying the visit had gone wonderfully. I want to see Maya separately, I said, but this visit needs to be only you and Mom. Okay, he answered. My mother began objecting. No, Elaine, he said. It was the first time I remembered my father overruling her for me. They arrived in late September. I met them at the airport at 4:40. My father shook my hand and held it 2 seconds too long. My mother hugged me until I felt her tremble. The drive was 40 minutes of safe talk about traffic and rain. Then I brought them to the house. My mother admired the fixtures. My father went quiet. He walked through the first floor, studying the ceiling, restored trim, and the transition where new oak met the original stairs. I had spent an entire Saturday fitting that joint. He crouched and ran his thumb across it. Then he asked to see the basement. I showed him the north foundation wall, where I had underpinned 22 feet in 6 sections over 4 months, alone at night. He stood there for a minute. Who did this? He asked. I did. He put his hands in his pockets and looked again. Finally, he said, That is good work, Ethan. I will not pretend it meant nothing. My father was a tradesman. In his language, that was not praise. It was a diagnosis, and the closest thing his vocabulary contained to saying he loved me.
Leah carried Friday evening. She kept dinner light and redirected pauses. My father stayed in the conversation by asking technical questions about the foundation. The real conversation happened Saturday evening. Leah met Sophie for dinner, leaving the house to the 3 of us. We sat on the back deck I had built. My father held a beer, my mother had iced tea. I drank water because I wanted to remember every word. I began with one question, exactly as Dr. Mercer and I had practiced. Dad, when I walked you down that hallway and asked you to show me one thing of mine, what did you feel? He rotated the bottle in his hands. Honestly, he said, I felt caught. Caught. Not ashamed. Not sorry. Caught. Like a driver seeing lights in the mirror. It took me years to understand the difference between feeling bad about what you did and feeling bad because someone noticed. From the outside, they can look identical. Only one changes behavior. I appreciate the honesty. But what did you feel about the fact itself? That there was nothing of mine in the house where I grew up? He tried to answer twice and stopped. My mother stepped in, as she always did when silence threatened him. Ethan, we know we were not perfect, but you were always fine. You did not need us the way Maya did. When skating ended, she lost everything. She stayed close, and we helped her because that is what parents do. I looked at her. Do you hear what you just said? You invested in the child who stayed and ignored the child who left. Did it occur to you that I left because there was nothing there with my name on it?
Neither answered. Then I said the sentence I had been building for years. I believe you both feel that you love me as much as Maya, but love is not a private feeling nobody can inspect. Love is what you build, preserve, and make room for. You built a lit cabinet for 63 medals. You laminated a preschool ribbon. You hung 14 frames. And you removed my bedroom. My mother began to cry. Tell us what to do, she said. We will do it. Therapy had taught me that asking the injured person to design the repair was not the same as taking responsibility. Still, I gave them terms because specific things could be measured. First, say the actual sentence. We put Maya first, and we know it hurt you. Not, we were imperfect. Second, never call me dramatic again. Third, I need to exist physically in that house. Photographs in the hallway, not in a drawer. Fourth, Dad, call because you want to speak to me, not because Mom reminds you. Fifth, I need time. I will not trust the first 6 months. My mother nodded. My father stared at the deck boards. Finally, he said, that is fair. They flew home Sunday. At the door, my father began with a handshake, changed his mind, and hugged me badly. All shoulders, almost no arms. I am going to try, he said. I believed he meant it. I also knew intention was not evidence. For the next several months, I watched.
My father did not transform dramatically, but he made an effort. He called every other week. The conversations lasted 7 to 11 minutes and were awkward. Most were about heating systems, tools, or construction because those were the only subjects he could discuss without retreating. Sometimes he asked about a heat pump. Sometimes he called about a project. Once he asked me to explain underpinning. I spoke for 14 minutes. He did not interrupt. At the end, he said, all right, talk to you in a couple weeks. At 32, having my father call for no practical reason felt strange. It felt like wearing another man's coat. My mother tried differently. She called more often and asked about Leah, the wedding, and people from my company. But every conversation began with Maya, the academy, the girls, Lucas, and whatever crisis had happened that week. I timed it twice. Both times, 11 minutes passed before she asked about me. And no photograph appeared in the hallway. 6 months passed, then 7. I knew because Maya mentioned it casually. Mom keeps saying she is going to redo the hallway. The second proof was worse. My father texted me a picture of the new upstairs light fixture. He was proud of installing it. In the background were 14 frames unchanged. I enlarged it and counted them again. Then I placed the phone face down and sat at the kitchen table. The sentence had not been said either. Not by him, not by my mother. I gave them 9 months. Maya called one afternoon. I knew news was coming because she sounded formal, and my sister was never formal. She talked about the girls first. Then she said our parents had met with a lawyer to revise their estate plan. The house would go entirely to Maya. Their explanation was that she lived nearby, her daughters had grown up there, and it made sense for the property to remain in the family the way it was already being used. Any savings would be divided between us. Then Maya told me what they had not asked her to share. There were almost no savings. About $19,000 remained. The house carried a second mortgage and secured part of the loan for her academy. In reality, it had not fully belonged to my parents for years. They were leaving Maya a house attached to her debt and leaving me half of $19,000. And they had asked her to tell me. They had outsourced the conversation about removing me from their only asset to the person receiving it. I thanked Maya for telling me the truth. Then I hung up and called Leah. When she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a blank legal pad. They have not changed, I said. I know, she answered. What do you want to do? I looked at the empty page. I am done standing in their hallway, holding my own frame against the wall, waiting for someone to bring me a nail. For the first time, saying it did not feel like losing them. It felt like putting the frame down.
The first thing I did was hire a lawyer, not to challenge the estate plan. My parents could leave their house to a stranger if they wanted. I hired her because I assessed damaged structures for a living, and I needed to understand exactly what I was looking at before making decisions. Her name was Claire Brennan. She specialized in property and estate law and had a way of reading 50 pages before summarizing them in 4 sentences, each one carrying weight. 9 days later, she called me.
I want you to understand the shape of this before you decide how to feel, she said. The house secured two separate debts, my parents' second mortgage and part of Maya's commercial loan, which my father had co-signed. Any money you put into repairing that house would not simply help your parents, Claire explained. It would improve collateral securing your sister's business debt. If the academy fails, the lender may still take the property. You could spend a fortune repairing an asset that belongs, practically speaking, to a bank. Then she removed her glasses. And nothing I can do legally will give you what you actually want. You want them to say one sentence. Sentences are not billable. She was right. That mating prevented me from doing something expensive, emotional, and useless. Leah and I chose a wedding date. We planned it for September at a restored timber lodge in the mountains east of Portland. The building had been condemned in the 90s and later repaired by a crew Marcus knew. I'd volunteered there during 2 summers, rebuilding part of the rear deck. We invited 80 people. Leah's large, loud family, Marcus and Dana, Jonah and Sophie, several people from Northline, and friends would become family without announcing themselves as such. I did not invite my parents. There was no dramatic letter. I simply did not address 2 envelopes. Leah's mother asked about it once, gently. We want the day to belong to people who have shown up for us, Leah said. Nadia nodded. All right, sweetheart. She never mentioned it again. Maya found out from a cousin 6 weeks before the wedding. She called sounding panicked. Ethan, this is going to destroy Dad. I know, I said, but I cannot carry that for him anymore. She became quiet. Do you want me there? Yes, I really do, but I need you to come as my sister, not as their representative. I do not want to spend my wedding managing a family negotiation. Okay, she said. And to my surprise, she meant it. My mother learned 4 weeks before the ceremony. She called at 8:40 on the Tuesday night, already crying. How can you do this to your father? A father has the right to watch his son get married. We have been trying so hard, and you are taking this away from him. I let her finish. Then I said, I need you to answer 3 questions. She went silent. It has been 9 months since you sat on my deck. Has one photograph of me been added to the hallway? No answer. Has either of you said the sentence I asked for? Nothing. You went to a lawyer, removed me from the house, and made Maya tell me. Which part of that was trying?
I am not punishing you, I said. I am protecting one day of my life. Punishment would be about hurting you. This is about keeping myself safe. You will regret this, she whispered. One day you will wish your father had been at your wedding, and it will be too late. Maybe, I said, but I have spent most of my life wishing he had been waiting at the end of the pool. At least this absence is one I get to choose. She ended the call. 2 days later, my father phoned on schedule. He spoke about a commercial heating system and a job Northline had recently bid. He did not mention the wedding until the end. Then there was a pause. Your mother told me, he said. I waited. I know why. Before I could respond, he added, all right, talk to you in a couple weeks. Then he hung up.
The wedding was perfect because every person in that lodge had chosen to be there. When Leah came down the aisle, I fell apart. Jonah, standing beside me, handed me a folded shop rag because it was all he had. I laughed and cried in front of 80 people. Marcus gave a toast that began with a joke about Northline's old flatbed and ended somewhere none of us were prepared for. Leah's father said he was glad his daughter had married a man who understood that love was something you built, not something you announced. I understood. During the reception, Maya found me on the rear deck. I have walked down that hallway my entire life, she said, probably 20,000 times. I never counted the photographs. I am sorry, Ethan. You were a child too. I was not a child for the last 10 years. It was the most honest thing anyone in my family had ever said. She did not defend our parents. She hugged me and returned to the reception as my sister. 10 days later, my mother sent a card. There was no apology. It said congratulations and that she wished she could have attended, as though she had missed the wedding because of a scheduling conflict. My father sent a box with no note. Inside was a canvas roll containing his old pipe wrenches, a Yankee screwdriver, and a 4-foot level with his initials scratched into the frame. My father could not write a wedding card, so he sent me the objects his hands knew best. I mounted the level on my office wall. I have never used it.
5 months after the wedding, everything in Ohio failed at once. Lucas lost Ellis Heating and Plumbing. The company ran out of money. He missed payroll twice, returned to the trucks, and closed a 32-year business. Then winter reached the house. The northeast corner settled from 2 inches to nearly 3. 2 doors would not close. Water stood in the crawl space, and the sill plate along the north wall began to rot. The furnace failed on December 11th. A man who had installed furnaces for most of his life spent winter in a settling house with 2 electric heaters and an unsafe fireplace. Then the bank sent a notice about the academy loan. Maya called me in January. She sounded as if she had not slept in weeks. "Mom asked me to call you," she began. Then she stopped. I could hear one of the girls behind her. Finally, Maya said, "Ethan, I know this is not fair. They keep putting me between you and I keep allowing it. I have known it was wrong for a long time." Her voice broke. "I am not calling to ask for money. I am calling because I do not know what else to do, and I am the only one still here." The father who had built a museum for one child and erased the other now needed the erased child to save the building. "I will come look at the house," I said. "I'm not promising money or repairs. I'm only coming to assess it." Tell them those exact words. "Okay," Maya said. Then quietly, "Thank you for not making me explain the technical part too."
I flew into Columbus on a Thursday in February. I did not tell my parents I was coming until I was 40 minutes away. I wanted to see the house before I saw them trying to behave differently inside it. My father was standing in the driveway when I arrived. I didn't hug him. I opened the trunk and took out my boots, flashlight, moisture meter, 4-foot level, and tool bag. "I want to see the crawl space first," I said. "All right," he answered. I inspected the house exactly as I would have for a client, because professionalism was the only way I could remain inside those walls. I spent nearly an hour on my back beneath the northeast corner. More than 2 inches of water covered part of the crawl space. The sill plate had softened so badly that I could push a screwdriver deep into it with almost no pressure. The pier beneath the corner had punched through an undersized footing poured on loose fill decades earlier. It had held far longer than it should have. Then the grading worsened. A downspout failed and water began collecting against the foundation. I checked the roof, opened the electrical panel, measured the settlement, and traced moisture along the north wall. My father followed me for 6 hours. He barely spoke. Once he offered me the wrong pry bar. I asked for the flat one. He returned with it and handed it over without a word. By the 4th hour, he stopped trying to help and simply watched. When I climbed out for the last time, covered in dirt, I stood in the driveway wiping my hands on a rag. My father looked at the notes on my clipboard. "You are better at this than I ever was," he said. "Thanks." I will not pretend the words repaired anything. A father telling you at 32 that you are skilled is not the same as a father watching you become skilled. That night, in my hotel room, I wrote a structural report. 11 pages, photographs, measurements, repair sequence, and estimated costs. The northeast corner needed a new footing and underpinning. 26 feet of sill plate had to be replaced. The crawl space needed drainage, encapsulation, and new grading. The furnace and electrical service needed replacement. The total estimate was $143,000. I printed the report at a business center before sunrise. Then I returned to the house and placed it on the kitchen table. My mother made coffee. Maya came over. Lucas wisely stayed home. The 4 of us sat at the same table where I had eaten hundreds of dinners beneath paper towels. I turned the report toward my father. "This is what is wrong with the house," I said, "and this is what it will cost." Then I added, "I have the money, so this is not a question of whether I can help. It is a question of whether I will." Nobody moved. Before anyone speaks, I need all 3 of you to listen. I have spent my entire life in this house, and I have never once had the floor. For the first time, they gave it to me. No one interrupted.
I began with the 5 things I had asked for in Portland. You sat on my deck and asked what I needed. I made the answer specific so nobody could misunderstand later. I asked one of you to say the sentence. Nobody did. I asked to exist in the hallway. Dad, you sent me a photograph of the new light fixture with all 14 frames still behind it. I asked you to stop calling me dramatic. Mom, Maya told me what you said to Aunt Denise at Christmas. And while all of that was happening, you went to a lawyer and signed a document leaving the house to one child. Then you made that child tell the other one. My mother started to speak. I am not finished, Mom. She stopped. For once, she waited. I had a lawyer review the loan documents, I continued. This house secures your second mortgage and part of Maya's academy debt. Dad co-signed that loan. You are not asking me to repair your home. You are asking me to spend $143,000 improving collateral for someone else's business debt. If the academy fails, the bank can take this house anyway.
Everything I build here could become a gift to a lender. I looked at my father. This is the house you want me to save. The house where my bedroom became a training room. The house with a lit cabinet full of Maya's medals and a plaque in the garage saying where it all began. You want me to underpin a monument to your favoritism. Silence filled the kitchen. My mother covered her mouth. Maya stared at the table. My father placed both hands flat on the report. Then he said, "You are right." 3 words, no excuses. No explanation about doing their best, no claim that they loved us equally. He looked older than I had ever seen him. "We put your sister first from the day you were born," he said. "We knew we were doing it and we did it anyway. It hurt you." He looked down at his hands. "I have known since the night you walked me through that hallway. I could not say it because I did not think a man could admit something like that and still look at himself." I sat without speaking. Something inside me loosened. For years, part of me had remained at the end of a swimming lane, medal in my hand, searching the parking lot for a dark blue truck that had already left. The truck did not return. The boy was not rescued. But at last, someone had admitted that he had been left there. I let the words remain in the room. Then I turned the report over and said, "All right, here is what happens next. I am going to repair the house. Not because I owe you, I do not. I am doing it because I have decided I would rather live with helping than refusing. But there will be conditions, and they are not negotiable." I slowly picked up a pen. "First, my company does the work. I will record a legal interest against the property for the value of what we put into it. That does not mean I am taking your house. It means the bank cannot take my work for free." Nobody objected. "Second, the estate plan is rewritten. 2 children, equal shares. I don't care whether the value is large or nothing. Neither child is erased. Third, what you said gets written down and signed by both of you. Shame may tempt you to soften it later. I want the truth preserved. Fourth, photographs of me go in the hallway beside the others, not in a drawer, on the wall. Fifth, Dad, you keep calling every other week because you choose to. And one more thing. Thanksgiving will be at my house." My mother looked up. "You will come to Portland and sit at a table I built in a house I restored. You will meet the people who know me, not to embarrass you, so you can see the life you missed." My father nodded. "Okay." My mother was crying differently now. On the deck, her tears had been about feeling exposed. These seemed to be about what she had done. "We will come," she said. They did. At Thanksgiving, Leah cooked enough food for twice the guests. Marcus and Dana came. Jonah and Sophie brought their children. Miguel joined because his family lived overseas. My parents sat there for 4 hours and watched the life they had never seen. They watched Marcus ask my opinion and wait. They watched Jonah tease me. They watched Leah touch my shoulder as she passed. They watched people ask about Northline and my work. At the door, my mother held both my arms. "I am sorry I missed it," she said. "I am sorry I missed you." That was her first apology without an explanation. The following April, my crew and I spent 19 days in Ohio. We raised the northeast corner, poured a footing, replaced the sill plate, installed drainage, sealed the crawl space, corrected the grading, and replaced the furnace. My father worked beside us daily. At 63, he was slower and often in the way. He carried tools, mixed material, asked questions, and listened. On the final afternoon, I brought a box from my truck. Inside were 6 frames. My 8th grade portrait, a photograph of me at 15 in the oversized hard hat, the newspaper picture from the district swim meet, my university graduation photograph, uncropped, a picture of Leah and me on the steps of our house, and a photograph of Northline's first truck with Jonah, McGill, and me beside it. I carried them into the hallway. At the far end was empty plaster that had always been there. My father held the level while I marked the positions. Neither of us spoke. It took 40 minutes to hang all 6. The bronze medal from the district meet is not in that hallway. It hangs in my office beside my race number and Grandma Ruth's notebook. Leah once asked why I displayed that medal instead of one of Northline's awards. I told her it was not about the medal. It was for the boy at the end of the pool, water running from his hair, searching the parking lot for a truck that was no longer there. I hung it where he could see it, so he would know someone finally showed up for him. That someone was me.